it's not an easy shift to go through because we were all recruited on skills. But actually, we've got to look for that raw talent and motivation and find the right people, not the people who can do the job.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fantastic one. Our guest is the head of accounting at Practice Ignition for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. He has over 23 years of experience in the accounting industry, and during that time has provided advice to small and large enterprises throughout the United Kingdom, Europe, and North America. He's also a massive advocate for small business owners around the world. Carl Reeder, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Michael, thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you, and I've been following you for a while, and I absolutely love the work you do and your message, and I'm excited to share with our listeners your story if they haven't already learned about you.
Sure. So should I kick off with a bit of background?
I would love to go there.
Fantastic. So yeah, Michael, thank you so much for the introduction because you introduced me far better than I ever could. You know, I just tend to give a bit of backstory and it gets a bit messy. But yeah, Michael, as you've said, so I serve as head of accounting for Practice Ignition for the EMEA region. I also serve as chairman for D&T, which is my accountancy firm that I joined back in 2002. Bought the firm out in 2007 and built it. So we scaled from 8 employees to about 60. So it's now a multi-million turnover firm. I serve as chair of the practitioners panel for the ACCA, which is the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants. And yeah, I do a fair bit on the side as well, as you touched on. So I've written a couple of books and speak on podcasts like this, but also on radio. I do columns in the national press, and I tend to stick my nose in where it's not wanted. I think it's the best way of putting it, Michael.
Nice. Well, tell us a little bit about those early days of what got you into accounting.
Sure. So probably I don't want to upset your listeners who I'm sure from a very early age dreamt of being an accountant. You know, as they were growing up, they couldn't think of anything more thrilling or exciting than adding up numbers and sitting in an office for 7 hours a day, 40 hours a week. But look, I was very much an accidental accountant, Michael. So I left school at the age of 15. And this was before my GCSE exams. So GCSE exams in the UK are, I guess, high school qualifications is the best way of wording it. So I left school and started an apprenticeship in hairdressing. That lasted all of about 6 weeks. And then I decided that actually, you know what, I need to go back to school. I need to get my exams finished, which I did, and then decide what I was going to do with myself. But I didn't go on to college or university. Instead, I was, by personal circumstances, forced to find a job. You know, by the age of 16, I had a child on the way, had my own house, and so on and so forth. So I had to get a real job at a very early stage. And I applied for every job in the newspaper and ended up falling into accountancy completely by accident.
Wow.
So whereas many people go into accountancy and finance with at least some form of vision that that's what they want to do, it was entirely accidental to me. In fact, I had to go to the public library just beforehand and find out what an accountant actually does before the interview. So I was fortunate enough to be offered a role in an accountancy firm, and it kind of went from there. So that's how I fell into it. Along the way, though, I realised pretty early on that I was very much a square peg in a round hole in accountancy. It wasn't a passion of mine. It wasn't something I particularly enjoyed. But what I really did enjoy was meeting business owners, speaking to them, and asking the simple questions about why they do what they do to try to get under the skin of what makes a successful business. And I don't know whether that was just an early interest in the wider business world, or that was just me being my natural talkative self. I'm an extrovert by nature, which is quite unusual in accountancy. I tend towards dominance and influence on disc profiles and so on. So I really enjoy and thrive being around other people and conversation and social environments. So I did just that. And within probably 2 to 3 years of my career, I stopped training. I started to train business owners on computerizing their systems to begin with, because this was back in probably the year 2000. Most businesses were still handwriting their books rather than using software. So I was getting them either onto Excel or onto Sage. And then I moved to join D&T 2002, got handed a bunch of clients who were all over the UK. So we started using online accounting in 2002 just as a necessity to be able to service them, because floppy disks were getting broken in the post. Became the first firm first firm outside of New Zealand to embrace Xero. So we brought Xero over to the UK, became the first contracted partner of theirs, ramped that up pretty quickly, became one of the first QuickBooks Online partners as well. And yeah, the rest is history, I guess. But to be fair, in the last 20 years, my real focus hasn't been on doing the numbers, but instead it's been mainly focused on how to build a business within the finance space.
That's great. Now, I hear you have a book coming out. Can you tell us about it?
I've written the book Boss It, which is being launched in North America on the 27th of October. So pre-orders are gratefully appreciated. Anyway, in there, I put forward my model of dream, plan, do, review. And I believe that most businesses fall down at some point because of a failure to either dream big or dream realistically, a failure to plan effectively. So that's not over planning, not under planning, a failure to take action, or a failure to review and start this whole process again. So, I cover that in more detail in the book. There's also the scaling pillars that often, one of these gets missed, but you have a vision, and then with that, you need to have a growth strategy, whether that's franchising, licensing, organic growth, acquisitions, and so on. You need to have a funding platform, whether that's equity finance, debt finance, or self-funded. You need to have a management model, which is how you staff your business. And you need to have a leadership business, which is how you extract yourself from the business. So that's very generically what I've observed in the thousands of businesses that I've spoken to. But when it comes to accounting firms, I think that there's some more specific challenges that I would like to share that I've seen along the way that accountants and bookkeepers struggle with. So the first one is perhaps a misguided belief that tech is the solution. And tech is absolutely vital. But tech, I believe, first of all, for finance professionals, can be broken down in two areas. You've got internal tech and external tech. And often finance service providers tend to focus on external tech, which is client-facing rather than internal. But it also misses out a whole piece around culture, process, systemization, and most importantly, how we build the soft skills and communication skills that the future advisor needs. And I think that one of the reasons for that is that as a profession, we've been led by Michael E. Gerber and the E-Myth of building exceptional processes and systems so that we can have ordinary people. But actually, as a societal shift, we've gone through the change from business being B2B or B2C to actually being H to H, human to human. And now that we live in the stay-at-home economy, particularly with COVID, but even pre-COVID, we were living in a world where we might not see another person in the day because we would work. We could work from home. We could work from a laptop in a coffee shop. We could jump in an Uber rather than going to the cinema. We'd watch Netflix rather than going out to a restaurant. We'd order Deliveroo or Uber Eats. And the challenge with that way of life is that we've lost the human touch. And with automation and the race to the bottom from the tech giants, the one way that financial service providers, accountants, bookkeepers and so on can really stand out is through their interpersonal skills and how they communicate and how they build those relationships with clients. And tech doesn't solve that. So two very different answers. I gave you the generic answer that, certainly accountants should be giving their small business clients. But when it comes to accountants and bookkeepers themselves, it's perhaps an over-reliance on tech rather than looking at all of the aspects that make a really successful firm.
It's a great angle to be thinking about, and it's that human connection, being able to connect with your customers and build trust and create deep dialogues with them and create an experience for them that they feel that they're being cared for and dealt with appropriately. These are human skills. And you're saying that this is a key to growing the business, and I would agree with you. How have you seen business owners work on that part of the business? Because it's like you can't buy some tech for that typically.
No, you can. No, absolutely. So, and it's really challenging because certainly those of us who've been in business for 10 years plus, we've had the Gerber doctrine of extraordinary systems plus ordinary people gives us extraordinary results, whereas extraordinary people plus ordinary systems gives us ordinary results. But the reality nowadays, and unfortunately, is that we need both our systems and processes and our people to be extraordinary. So that's not to dismiss tech, but it's to say that we need to rank our people and the skills that they have at parity with the tech. So how do we overcome that? Now, generally speaking, those who've set up their own business and have gone it alone have had to learn it the hard way. They've had to learn it through client conversations. They've had to learn it through having the difficult conversations with hiring and firing staff. And it's something that they have developed themselves together with a bit of supplementary training. The challenge, which I think you've alluded to in your question, Michael, is how do we get the next generation who are joining as employees to really build up their employability and their future prospects, both within our own firms, but also for themselves, for future firms, and the changing role of a finance professional that they will see over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that's our mission, really, is how do we set them up for success? And it starts with the recruitment process. So I'm a big believer that many firms get recruitment completely wrong because they focus on skills first. Whereas the real issue is that actually accountants and bookkeepers tend to hire on skills. So they hire on somebody's ability to use QuickBooks Online or Xero or Sage or whatever package. They hire based on how well somebody knows the tax codes and all of this stuff. But actually, that stuff can be taught. So they hire on that, but they end up firing on attitude. They end up firing on personality. And that's the stuff that you cannot train. You can't retrofit attitude and personality into somebody. You can supplement their skill set, but you can't teach them to be a different person. So actually what we need to do is we need to redesign the way that we as accountancy firms, as bookkeeping firms, we need to redesign the way that we recruit. So how we've done it at D&T is we ask 3 questions. The first question is, will they do the job? So it's not can they do the job, it's will they do the job? A very different question. Will they be motivated enough to turn up and get on with their job? Secondly, will they fit into the team? Because we know that if we pick the wrong team member, it can be like a cancer to the organisation. And it's not just their performance at risk, it's the entire culture of the business. And that can take years to undo. So will they do the job? Will they fit into the team? Then and only then do we look at can they do the job. But the can they do the job question is the least important because that stuff can be taught fairly quickly. If we've got somebody who's got the core skills and has got the desire to move forwards, then actually we can provide them with the technical training over the next 6 months to bring them up to speed. If we know that they're going to be a future asset and they're going to be the right person. So that's the first thing. The next thing that we need to change is the way that we hire and fire. And again, the trap that we fell into and many accountants and bookkeeping firms fall into is that they have too much work to do. So they hire somebody very quickly. They hire the first person who's just about up to the job. But then they take a long time to get rid of them. And actually, we need to flip that on its head. And we need to hire slowly but fire quickly. If somebody's not a good fit, and let's say we've misjudged their attitude, we've misjudged the way they do things, we've misjudged how they'll fit into the team, then we need to have that conversation and find a constructive route forwards as quickly as possible. But those conversations can be avoided if we actually take our time in the hiring process. So if we plan out our capacity, plan out our staffing needs, and make sure that we have a logical, structured approach to it. So yeah, they would be my my tips on how we get it right at the hiring stage. And then I think that once we've got the right people, we need to give them client exposure as quickly as possible, because it's all well and good getting them to do the dog's body work that no one else wants to do in the office if they're junior in their organisation. But actually, get them enjoying, get them seeing the whites of their clients' eyes. And once they do that, a magical thing happens. And what it is, Michael, is that they go from seeing numbers on a screen to seeing a person. And once an accountant or bookkeeper can truly correlate in their mind that the £500 that they see on a screen isn't just a number that's very small compared to the other numbers, but is actually, that £500 is their kids' Christmas presents. That £500 is a week away. Once they can make that correlation, then the customer service and the staff engagement increase massively. So yeah, they would be the suggestions that I would have. It's not an easy shift to go through because we were all recruited on skills, but actually we've got to look for that raw talent and motivation and find the right people, not the people who can do the job.
I love it. Great conversation and a great reset of thinking around it, because there's so many stories of people who hire when they're desperate, at the point of desperation, where they just want someone to hire someone to come rescue them from their problems, having, no bandwidth left, that good stuff. And then also thinking and hoping that things will change when it's just not working out. And I think you've given some really great tips on how perhaps the owner is at the source of the problem by, if you hire someone who's got the skills and wants to do the work and will do the work and can do the work, but yet isn't motivated perhaps. I mean, you've really nailed something there when you connect the why for the staff with the client. It's like, why is this important? Well, it's like this person's, providing for his or her family, as well as perhaps, 20, 30 or 100 other families, right, in their business. Absolutely. And so it changes the numbers from just numbers to, wow, we're helping drive happiness and joy in families, right? It changes everything.
And the strange thing is that most firms, and again, I'm speaking anecdotally from the firms I speak to and what I see out there, but if you compare the recruitment process of most accountancy or bookkeeping firms to, let's say, a storage company, if we look at a warehouse. Now, if you are ordering stock and you've got a warehouse, you would make sure that your warehouse is big enough before you order the stock. That makes sense, doesn't it, Michael? You wouldn't put an order in for, I don't know, 10,000 boxes when your warehouse can only fit 1,000 in. So
that'd be bad. Yeah.
In both businesses, they build the capacity before they order the stock in their key driver. In professional services firms, the key driver is the staff. However, most firm owners only look at recruiting when they get too busy. They only look at recruiting once they've got the boxes piled up outside. And it's a back to front way of doing it. So it's about grasping the dynamics of your firm with some proactivity and really trying to forward plan rather than doing what's needed because of workload. So that's that. And then in terms of changing that dynamic between the staff and the clients, it comes down to your stakeholder analysis, making sure that that's absolutely clear within the organisation. I don't like using the phrase stakeholder analysis, so we use the 5 stars of D&T. We have our team members at the top, then we have our clients and the market that we serve, and then we have our industry and our community. So we prioritise our team members so that in turn they can then prioritise their clients. It's about that. It's about having a clear definition on your vision and your values and why you do what you do. It seems like it's just management nonsense, but if you truly want to have a workforce that make a difference in the world and deliver for your clients, it's an exercise that's well worth doing. And we get independent companies in to survey our team engagement at D&T, and we were actually in a very fortunate position where we were able to split test, where we changed half the organisation but not the other half. And the fact that the half that was positively impacted through these changes not only had higher engagement, but now represents about 85% of our business, is, I guess, the demonstrated answer of why this is a good thing. It's something that we need to do to stay ahead of the curve.
It's an exciting opportunity, I think, for many to think about their business, their hiring, and the capacity. And often I've heard along the wire, let the business drive your growth, right? You bring in new sales, you hire more people, right? So that you don't get ahead of your cash flow, perhaps, or live outside of your means. But it's a risky challenge to have, right? Because in a professional services, somewhat different, is that you can find yourself in the ability to actually deliver your promise to your customers if you're operating that way. So it does take, I think, planning and really, like you say, the vision, knowing exactly where you're going, and build up your ability to be able to build the business and have predictability around that, because you don't want to be, and I've been on that end of the receiving end, where I've worked with a firm that's growing, and it's great to see and exciting to see businesses start to grow and take off. But then at those times, it's like what I had before the growth goes down in quality, and that you don't want to leave that with customers either. So how do you, what would be some advice around getting yourself in the position where you can build up and have the capacity before you have the goods to receive, if that makes sense?
Sure. So I think the model that you've mentioned is the model, I don't know if it's one that's out there by any of these so-called experts or so on, but it's the model certainly that many firms have adopted, which is to wait for the growth to happen to you rather than to chase the growth and then recruit. But the problem is that model is broken. And the reason that model is broken is very simple. When you get to a certain point in your business, and we hit it at about 1.8 million turnover, I would say. So that's what's that in your
probably
about $3 million, I guess?
Probably 2.5, somewhere around there, 2.5, 2.7.
Yeah, so we found at that point, about 40 staff members, we found that the challenge was that churn overtakes your growth, because organically you can only grow so fast. If you haven't got any set approach or science behind your business growth, you get to a point where your churn rate, which we all have churn, whether we like to claim we give the best service or not, we all have a percentage churn rate. And there becomes a point where that churn rate, the treadmill gets faster and faster to run on. So that's why I think that model was broken, just commercially, that we need to actually grow strategically. And you're right, it's cash intensive, it really is. But firms need to work out how they're going to grow, if they're going to grow, how they are going to fund that growth. And as you say, and it's a very important point, how you're going to service the customers you bring on. And it's never been more important than now, because I genuinely believe that the relationship between a client and an advisor has changed. Whereas certainly in the UK, up until recently, it was once a year. It's moving towards once a quarter with Making Tax Digital. However, customer expectations are being led by the likes of Netflix and companies like this that work on a subscription model. And with payments being taken monthly now as standard, invoicing being done as monthly as standard, clients are expecting an always-on service. Combine that with the fact that generally we're advising clients nowadays on the tech that they can put into their businesses. And actually, there's a whole load of effort needed up front at the start of a client relationship. So we need to make sure that we can service that subscription over the lifetime of the subscription, not just the tax filing deadlines. And that change in dynamic between the relationship between client and accountant means, in my eyes, that the growth needs to be a whole lot more deliberate, so that we don't mismanage our capacity, we don't let our clients down, and we don't churn in the first year of taking them on. And that's the absolute vital thing that we need to get right in our businesses, is that we don't churn within the first 12 months. Because if we do, it's almost certainly not worth taking those clients on. Even in our strongest defined niche market, and I'm a big fan of niche marketing, we hit probably 60p in the pound take on a client, it used to be 44p in the pound. Locally, where we haven't got such a clear market definition, it's probably more like pound for pound. So if we churn in the first year, we've lost money on it.
It's something that I love that. It is the thinking is that often, people going through business and it's like you bring on clients and you just expect that those clients are going to be around for the long haul, right? Without measurement, of course, you could find that that's not the case likely. And when you're small, it's probably likely the case. And that's maybe where the thinking comes from, right? Because you can care for them, you take care of them, you deliver the promise to them. But as you scale up and grow, there becomes a point where the promise is no longer be delivered at that exceptional quality that it was happening. So I think that's great advice for anyone that's at that scale point, is to remember that every single one customer coming in is the most important customer at that time, to ensure that you're delivering the service, the promise, so that they don't churn. And if you do that and have half as many clients coming in, but you're able to get through that churn, the long run looks very, very different.
Absolutely. However, what I would say is not all clients are created equally. And I think that it's really important for firm owners to have a very clear definition of who their target market is, so that they can work out how they can service those clients and then in turn how they can promote towards them. If we look at every business in the world has definition of their client, even if it's Amazon, there will be certain demographics that they target over and above others, whether that's based on age or spending behavior or the fact they just might be more likely to buy a Kindle. Amazon will have a very clear view of who their preferred customer is, who's more profitable for them, and who fits within their service lines. And if a company is big and as globally dominating as Amazon does, then I can guarantee that a little old accounting firm with maybe 1,000 clients absolutely should have a very clear vision of who their target client is, where they're based, what industries are they in, and what kind of people do I enjoy working with as well.
Agreed. I mean, it's like always when you think about it, if you could pick your 3 best clients and then imagine that was, 100 of those, right? You'd be like, what a great thing to wake up into every day when you've got your business filled with great clients that you love working with and are connected to their business and what they're up to. It would be a far more enjoyable experience. And so we've kind of come at this from almost the reverse, talking about the scale, talking about hiring great people and creating a culture of people that want to be there, want to do the work, and can do the work, to, hey, fill your business with great people and make sure that they stay around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Carl, I love this conversation and I like your thinking. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to at Practice Ignition.
Yeah, sure. So I joined Practice Ignition in February, and I joined them on a consultancy basis as the title is Head of Accounting, but I don't do any numbers. I think the best way of summing it up is that it's an ambassadorial role. So acting as a brand ambassador for Practice Ignition in the region, but also providing feedback and support to the team at Practice Ignition. So it's a two-way process, helping to clarify and communicate their message externally, but helping to clarify and communicate internally what goes on in the real world of an accountancy or bookkeeping firm.
Lovely. And you've been now doing this for, it feels like almost a year now. How long has it been that you've been this head of accounting?
Yes, it's been about 6 or 7 months. It's a very part-time role, but it involves me bridging that communication gap between vendor and firm. And I was really excited to get involved with Practice Ignition, actually, because the problem that they solved wasn't the problem that I believe they solved. So they, your listeners might know them as the company that provides pre-cons at the accounting conferences and produces proposals. But actually, what the software does when we implement it at D&T, we noticed that it actually provides us with the metrics that we need to really drive the growth of our business. So it allows us to run our firm more like a SaaS business in terms of looking at subscriber numbers, lifetime value, all of that stuff. So It provides just true practice management rather than workflow management, which most of the legacy providers offer.
And that is a great angle to be thinking about, which is, I've often heard with Practice Ignition that it increases the rate of pay, like the getting paid on time, and then having the metrics to be able to look into the health of your business from that angle. So it's great to hear that it's made a difference in your business, and we definitely love Practice Ignition, what they've built, the culture that they've built in the community as well. We know it's making a massive difference in so many different firms in terms of them getting paid, being able to have that end of their business handled.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way of looking at Practice Ignition, so, it was very much focused on from proposal to paid. But actually, it's more like the Shopify for services is a great way of putting it. It manages the client relationship and the payment sides of it and so on. But it just allows you to effectively eliminate your debtors, your work in progress and so on, and run a practice like a business, which hopefully, as you've seen through the conversation, is something I'm a big fan of.
Absolutely. So definitely something that if our listener has not taken a look at Practice Ignition, it would definitely be something to look at. And I love the way you framed it as the Shopify for professional services firms. And for those that don't know Shopify, they do a fantastic job of just making it easy to collect money and service clients and grow your business. So Practice Ignition, we love what they're doing over there, and definitely was excited to see that you took on that head of accountancy. And Carl, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before we let you go, though, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about where people can learn more about you and the books that you've written and all the work that you're doing to help grow accounting firms, but as well the work you do to help grow businesses.
Sure. So the best place to find me is always social media. I'm an addict. So at Carl Reader, you'll find me on all the main platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat, all of them. I try to spread my message far and wide. In terms of books, so I wrote Startup Coach and Franchising Handbook. However, my new book, Boss It, is available at http:// carl.to/book. It's I would say it's a fantastic book. I've spent however many months writing it, but it's scheduled for launch October. There's different dates depending on where you are in the world, but for the North American market, 27th October. In terms of the book, it's a great book. If you do pre-order, drop me a message through social media to let me know, and I'll add you for the pre-order bonuses as well. And in terms of what I'm doing for accounting firms and for small businesses, I'm certainly in the accounting world, I'm doing a lot more insofar as speaking at conferences. So I'll be main stage, COVID pending, at Scaling New Heights in Orlando in November. I will also be involved in some other events. So it will be great to meet any of your listeners if they've liked what they've heard and want to come along to see me in the flesh, so to speak. I would love to speak to them. And from the social media side of things, you'll see my activity in the small business space as well.
Fantastic. Carl, we will have a link to your new book in there. And as well, you mentioned that there are some bonuses that if people do end up pre-ordering your book, that they should reach out to you. We'll have the information in our show notes for them to go ahead and do that. It's exciting. Congratulations on getting another book done and out. And we're all looking forward to giving that a read.
Thank you. And I wish that I could make the pre-order process a whole lot more smoother. I'm not a fan of disjointed systems like this, but unfortunately, because I'm using a traditional publishing house, so one of the main publishers, I don't actually have access to the back end of Amazon. So that's with the publishers. So I can't actually see who's ordered, who hasn't. So yeah, if you drop me a message to confirm that you pre-ordered, I can get you added onto the list. And then we can, it's a bit of a workaround of the system. So I do apologize, Michael, for making that a little bit more complicated than it perhaps needs to be.
No worries. I totally understand. It's all good, and I think people are willing to do those sorts of things when there's, help support an author that's writing great content for them, and also be able to get some bonuses, right? The cost of a book is, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever the book is, right? The amount of work that you put into that book is hundreds, thousands maybe of hours, not just by you, by many other people, and it's written to serve the reader. And so it's a very small amount that we pay as readers, and I think we forget that, right? Oh, this book's $20. It's like, what went into that book's a heck of a lot more than $20, and the impact it can have on our business is like 10,000x, right? Often. So we're willing to remind the listener that, there's gold in books and gold in content. And there's a famous quote. Charlie Tremendous Jones said that you will be the same person 5 years from now, but for, I think it's 1 year from now, but for the books you read and the people you surround yourself with. And so put great things into your brain and it'll change your life.
Absolutely. So look, in terms of the book, it's great not just for accountants or bookkeepers themselves for their own business, but also for their clients' businesses as well. It's effectively a playbook, and it opens up the conversations about true business advisory. So going beyond being the bean counter and counting the numbers, it opens up conversations about loads of other areas as well. So exciting. I can guarantee it'll be a great read, and firm owners will end up buying it for their clients as well.
Beautiful. I'm excited to give it a read, Carl. And again, this has been terrific. And we thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Beautiful. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.